James Kirkland, star athlete, all-American boy next door. He had it all: the looks, the charm, and a smile that could melt glaciers. At Elkhart Memorial High, James was a legend in the making. But beneath the surface, a darkness lurked. James excelled in school, treated everyone with kindness, and possessed an infectious laugh. His parents beamed with pride at their son's accomplishments. Enter Michael, Laura, and CJ, James's loyal companions since childhood. They were an unlikely quartet, their bond unbreakable. Together they formed James's inner circle, his confidants, his rocks. But their idyllic world was about to be shattered by a darkness that seeped in like a poison. Elkhart Memorial High School. Friday nights were sacred, the air thick with anticipation. Football was more than just a game in Elkhart, it was a religion. And James Kirkland, with his athletic prowess and undeniable charm, was about to become its high priest. Little did he know he was about to lose much more than a few teeth. The aroma of pepperoni and extra cheese wafted through Michael's basement. "Guys, if I make the team, we are going to celebrate like we've never celebrated before," James declared. Laura rolled her eyes, her laughter echoing through the room. "Hey, a guy can dream, can't he?" James retorted. The pact was sealed with a chorus of cheers, a shared dream woven into the fabric of their friendship. The Elkhart Memorial football field became James's proving ground. He moved with a natural grace, his body a weapon forged in sweat and determination. Weeks turned into months. James blossomed into a star player. Through it all, Michael, Laura, and CJ remained his constant companions. But they also saw the changes in him, subtle at first, like cracks in a once impenetrable facade. A seed of unease had been planted, growing with each passing day. The night Elkhart Memorial clinched the city championship, the air crackled with electricity. The crowd roared as James caught the game-winning touchdown, but as James raised his arms in victory, his eyes seemed to darken. The next day at school, James was a changed person. He walked the halls with an aura of arrogance. He had become a puzzle, his actions increasingly erratic and unsettling. Whispers followed James through the crowded hallways of Elkhart Memorial. Rumours spread like wildfire, each more outlandish than the last. The disappearances started slowly. Fear, cold and insidious, began to seep into their hearts, replacing the warmth of their once unbreakable bond. The strangest thing about James's transformation was the girls. 10. He had 10 girlfriends simultaneously. Michael, CJ, and Laura watched in stunned silence. "Dude, how's this even possible?" CJ asked. Laura shuddered. "It's creepy, CJ." Michael, ever the observer, remained silent, feeling that something was deeply, terrifyingly wrong. The disappearances continued. Missing posters began appearing on bulletin boards. The girls on the posters all shared a similar fate, last seen with James Kirkland. The school was a pressure cooker of fear and suspicion. Michael knew he had to do something, but what? One afternoon, Michael decided to take action. He snuck into the locker room and found James's locker unlocked. Inside, he found a small, leather-bound book with strange symbols. The book described James's transformation, the girls, the disappearances. One entry read, "The ritual is almost complete. Soon the true transformation will begin." That evening, as Michael, Laura, and CJ sat huddled in Michael's basement, James appeared at the top of the stairs. He smiled, but it wasn't the James they knew. "What are you guys doing down here?" he asked, his voice a low growl. "James, we need to talk," Michael said. "We know about the book." James's smile widened, becoming something monstrous. "Do you? And what do you plan to do about it?" Laura and CJ exchanged terrified glances. "We're your friends, James," Laura pleaded. "We want to help you," James laughed. "Help me? You can't help me. This is who I am now." The monster that had been lurking beneath the surface of their friend had finally been unleashed, and it was hungry. The days that followed were a blur of fear and uncertainty. James, once the center of their world, was now a stranger, a terrifying enigma they could no longer decipher. The girls continued to flock to him, but even they seemed to sense a change, a darkness they couldn't quite place. They still giggled at his jokes, but their laughter was strained, their eyes darting nervously around the room as if searching for an escape route. The disappearances had stopped, but the relief was short-lived, replaced by a chilling certainty that something far worse was brewing. Michael, Laura and CJ were walking on eggshells, terrified of saying or doing anything that might trigger James, turn him from their friend into the monster they feared he had become. They tried to talk to him, to reach out through the darkness that had enveloped him, but every attempt was met with a cold stare or a dismissive wave of his hand. He was slipping away from them, drawn deeper into a world they didn't understand, a world where their friendship, their history seemed to hold no sway. "He's gone, isn't he?" Laura whispered one night, her voice choked with unshed tears. They were huddled in Michael's basement, the remnants of their childhood scattered around them like fallen leaves. The air was thick with a sense of loss, a grief so profound it threatened to suffocate them. Michael's gaze fell on a corner of the room, a corner that had always held a special significance for their group. It was where James kept his most prized possessions, a shrine to his geeky passions, or rather used to keep. The action figures, once meticulously arranged on shelves, were gone. The posters that had adorned the walls, images of superheroes and anime characters, had vanished, leaving behind faded squares of discoloration. The only thing that remained was a lone poster lying crumpled on the floor. It was a poster of Sailor Moon, her blue hair and determined expression a stark contrast to the desolation of the room. James had always adored Sailor Moon, her unwavering optimism and fierce loyalty resonating deeply with him. He carried her picture with him everywhere, a talisman against the harsh realities of high school. Michael's heart sank. This was it. This was the confirmation he had been dreading. The discarded poster wasn't just a random act of teenage rebellion. It was a symbolic severing, a rejection of the person James used to be. The darkness had consumed him, leaving behind only a hollow shell. "Guys, remember the pact we made?" Michael asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He picked up the crumpled poster, his fingers tracing the outline of Sailor Moon's determined face. Laura and CJ exchanged uneasy glances. The pact. It felt like a lifetime ago, a relic of a simpler time when their biggest concern was whether they had enough pizza to last through their all-night gaming marathon. "The one where we'd celebrate if James made the team?" CJ asked, his voice tinged with a bitterness that was alien to him. "Yeah, that one," Michael said, his gaze fixed on the poster. "We made a pact. We promised to be there for each other no matter what." "What are you saying, Michael?" Laura asked, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and understanding. Michael took a deep breath, the weight of their predicament heavy on his chest. "I'm saying the pact's been broken," he said, his voice firm with a resolve he didn't quite feel. "James broke it. He chose this darkness over us." He let the poster fall to the floor, the sound echoing in the silence of the basement. "We have to stop him," he said, his voice filled with a determination that surprised even himself. "Even if it means—" He trailed off, unable to voice the thought that had taken root in his mind, a thought that filled him with both terror and a strange sense of purpose. Even if it meant destroying the monster that had once been their friend. The air in the basement crackled with a new kind of energy, the energy of fear and desperation, but also of a fierce, unwavering loyalty. They had made a pact, and even though it had been broken, they would honor it in their own way. They would save James, even if it meant saving him from himself. The roar of the crowd was deafening. The Football World Championship. A sea of faces, a kaleidoscope of color and sound, all focused on the single point of light that was James Kirkland. He was a god among men, his every move cheered, his every breath worshipped. But beneath the surface, a storm raged. The score was tied, final seconds ticking down. The pressure was immense, crushing. James could feel it, a weight pressing down on him, threatening to break him. But this wasn't the pressure of the game, the weight of expectation. This was something else, something darker, something ancient and hungry. The final play was called, a Hail Mary, a desperate hope launched into the sky. The crowd held their breath as the ball soared through the air, a tiny speck against the vast expanse of the stadium lights. And then, silence. The ball fell short. Intercepted, game over. A collective groan rippled through the stadium. Disappointment hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. But for James, it was a relief, a release. He had failed, he had lost, and in that loss he found a perverse sense of freedom. As his teammates slumped to the ground, their dreams shattered, a smile spread across James's face. A slow, predatory smile that sent chills down the spines of everyone who saw it. The mask was gone. The transformation was about to begin. It started subtly, a flicker in his eyes, a twitch of his lips. And then it hit. A wave of power, raw and untamed, surged through James's body. His bones cracked and shifted, his muscles contorting into unnatural shapes. His skin, once dark brown and smooth, turned a sickly green, scales erupting from beneath the surface. The crowd, initially oblivious, began to notice the change in their hero. Whispers turned to gasps of horror as James's transformation accelerated. His teeth lengthened into fangs, his fingers morphing into razor-sharp claws. He roared, a sound of pure animalistic rage that echoed through the stadium, shaking the very foundations of the structure. Panic erupted. The stands emptied in a chaotic scramble for the exits. People shoved and trampled each other in their desperation to escape the nightmare unfolding before their eyes. But there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The monster had been unleashed. James, no longer recognizable as the boy who had once graced the cover of the high school yearbook, turned his attention to the fleeing crowd. His eyes, now glowing with an infernal light, scanned the panicked faces, a look of pure hunger on his face. The hunt had begun. Michael, Laura, and CJ watched in horror as their friend, their brother, transformed into something monstrous before their very eyes. The pact they had made, the bond they had forged, seemed like a distant memory, a cruel joke in the face of the carnage unfolding before them. They had tried to warn the others, to tell them that something was wrong, that James was not who he seemed. But their words had fallen on deaf ears, dismissed as the ramblings of jealous friends. Now they were paying the price. As the crowd thinned, as the screams grew fainter, Michael, Laura, and CJ found themselves alone in the stands, the only witnesses to the horror that had consumed their friend. They huddled together, their bodies trembling, their eyes wide with a terror that threatened to consume them. And then James turned his glowing eyes on them. A slow, cruel smile spread across his monstrous face. He had saved the best for last. Silence. The once vibrant stadium, now a graveyard of shattered dreams and broken bodies. The air, thick with the coppery tang of blood and the stench of fear, hung heavy over the scene. There was no cheering, no laughter, no sound of youthful exuberance, only the echo of screams and the chilling knowledge of what had transpired. Michael, Laura, and CJ stood frozen, paralyzed by the horror they had witnessed. They were alive. He had spared them, but why? The question echoed in the silence, a cruel mockery of their former friendship. Were they meant to be trophies, grim reminders of the monster's humanity? Or was there a darker purpose, a plan yet to be revealed? They stumbled out of the stadium, their steps slow and uncertain, like newborn foals taking their first tentative steps. The world outside seemed alien, the normalcy of everyday life a jarring contrast to the carnage they carried within them. The laughter of children, the chirping of birds, the rumble of traffic, all grated on their raw nerves, a constant reminder of what they had lost, of what they could never unsee. The boy they had known, the friend they had loved, was gone. In his place stood a monster, a creature of darkness and destruction, and as they disappeared into the night, the weight of their survival pressed down on them, a burden they would carry for the rest of their days. They were alive, but a part of them had died in that stadium, along with their innocence, their faith in the world, and the belief that some bonds could never be broken. For they knew with a chilling certainty that the horror was far from over.